Our next speaker is Anna Bani. I hope I'm pronouncing that.
It's Bainey.
Bainey, thank you.
Okay.
Bainey, an accomplished journalist with over 20 years of experience writing about housing. She's covered housing for CNN, USA Today, and the New York Times, and she's contributed to the Washington Post and Forbes, among others. She's extensively reported on the home buying and selling process from the consumer perspective, as well as the industry's technological and regulatory developments. Her dedication to unraveling the complexities of the housing market has earned her numerous accolades, establishing her as an authority in the field. She holds degrees from Columbia University and Emory University, and she's based in Washington, D.C., and she's going to talk to us about Beyond 6%, the future for home buyers and sellers.
I think I have a microphone on. Thanks. Thanks. I want to thank everybody for putting this together today. I think it's a really great opportunity to bring together a lot of different voices. I'm a journalist. I've been doing this for 20 years. And I've written plenty of what we call in the industry evergreen stories. These are always fresh, never stale, ready to run, stories we do over and over, like how to save for a down payment, what it takes to apply for a mortgage, and one that perennially comes up is, do I have to pay a 6% commission? This is something that buyers, and particularly sellers, always want to know. The headlines change, but the gist of the story is often the same. All the way back in 2005, a story I wrote about this for the New York Times was titled, "Are Commissions Negotiable? Sort of." I spoke with an agent at Corcoran Group in New York City who said that all the listings in their internal system that had commissions lower than 6% were red, like an alert. And the message to the agents was clear: stay away. The stories that I write often include an agent who warned that no buyers will come to see a listing because of its low fee. I often talk to sellers who have negotiated a lower fee, and they find the refrain of the agents kind of surprising. They actually had plenty of buyers that came to see their house. Each article usually has some kind of mention of pending litigation or governmental action, and I typically wrap it all up with helpful tips about how not to pay a 6% fee. And it's always the same: opt out, shop around, negotiate. But finally, this spring, the story changed. I wrote a sentence that I never thought I would write: the 6% commission is no more. I know. Almost nobody liked it. Let's be frank. The industry executives and real estate agents let me know that it was misleading. Of course they could command a 6% commission, but also there was no really such thing as a 6% commission. And lawyers and academics and economists, they wanted me to know that, in the broader, longer view of structural change, these rule changes were sort of incremental, and the settlement left a lot of room for workarounds. You could drive a 6% size bus through. So without any more regulatory changes, they said commissions would stay the status quo. But that sentence was liked by buyers and sellers. This is what they want to hear. The readers told me that they wanted to know more, whether it was that they were unaware of their power, or they were curious, or they were emboldened by the prospects. That message is for them. Buyers, who are the ones bringing the bag of money to the closing deal, and sellers, who are the ones who decide who gets what out of that bag of money, they are the ones that have the power to eradicate a de facto 6% commission if they want to. They just need to know that there's a choice, and they have to have rules and systems that don't hurt them and have their back. Every time a seller agrees to a 6% commission, it is a data point that that's an acceptable rate. Every buyer who allows themselves to be represented by an agent whose incentives are not aligned with theirs is a data point that says that's an efficient and fair model. And buyers and sellers have to decide if that's the message that they want to send. So I'm here to defend the statement that the 6% commission is no more, and to show that there was a before the NAR settlement with commissions sort of hewing closer to 6%, and an after, where commissions which have been trending down sort of slowly and are moving away from 6%, and that this settlement is the tipping point. It's the beginning of the change. You will hear realtors say all the time that the commissions are negotiable, and they are, but they haven't always been. And sharing commissions was baked into the process from the very beginning. The shared commission structure was set up in 1913, and it appeared in the first code of ethics of the National Association of Real Estate Exchanges, which is the forerunner of the National Association of Realtors. A section of the code entitled Duties to Other Brokers stipulated that an agent could, quote, always be ready and willing to divide the regular commission equally with another member of the association who can produce a buyer for any client, end quote. The NAR's current code of ethics allows commission sharing but does not require it. Until the Supreme Court put a stop to it in 1950, commission rates were actually set in a schedule by regional boards of realtors. Boards specifically forbade undercutting the prevailing rate, which was climbing. In the 1920s in Boston, for example, the typical commission was 2.5%, but by the 1940s it had reached 5%, and the standard de facto commission has pretty much stayed there since. Agents have long argued that commission rate was fair because they had the access to the listings unavailable to the public on the multiple listing service, which is where they put their listings in a regional database. But when a buyer today is finding their own listings on Zillow or Home or Realtor.com and taking them to the agent, and a seller is simply putting almost any habitable house on the market and getting plenty of offers, there's reason to question whether the slice of the pie for real estate agents really needs to be so large. Sure, agents can provide value, but at what cost? And who gets to decide how much? Here's my take on what the future after this tipping point is likely to look like for America's home buyers and sellers. For the seller of a median-priced home in the United States, which is about $380,000, a 6% commission is $23,000. As I said, that commission has been going down in recent years and is lower in some markets. But real estate commissions amount to a total of $100 billion a year. Analysts think that that can be cut by between 25 to 50% as a result of rule changes, like those included in the settlement. But it certainly isn't going to happen overnight, not by a long shot, because all the seller's options are still on the table. They'll still need to compensate their agent, and they can still opt to compensate the buyer's agent. But to get on the multiple listing service, they no longer have to. And if they do offer a commission to a buyer's broker, they can't post that on the MLS, but they can post it just about anywhere else. There's lots of workarounds. The more risk-averse and profit-indifferent sellers will likely stick with the status quo because there's absolutely no nudge for them to do otherwise. But millions of sellers, I think, are going to be more likely to be profit sensitive in their home sale especially in this market of elevated home prices and high mortgage rates. Over 90% of all homeowners that have a mortgage rate of 6% or lower, effectively locking them in to their home. They're waiting until the gap between their low rate and current rates narrows. Based on inflation data from this week, it isn't going to be soon. Maybe the end of this year, maybe next year. The sellers, when these sellers sell, they will be much more likely to ask, do I really have to pay a 6% commission? My ready advice still applies. And post-settlement, it actually has a little bit more oomph. Opt out, shop around, negotiate. To opt out, you just say, I'm not paying that commission. I'm exploring other ways to sell my home. There have long been other options, fixed rate, discount, different fee setups, but these models have struggled to gain market share. And they may get some of these profit-sensitive sellers. There are new financial technology companies tripping over themselves to solve for this. They are racing to get a piece of this disruption, and they could offer solutions. There are also models that are auctions. There are models that bundle services. A lawyer might also, if legally allowed in the state, become a buyer's agent, might get a real estate license and will serve as a lawyer and an agent, or a mortgage broker could also be the agent, and you could pay for those two services together. And there's models that incentivize compensation, where the agent gets paid more for selling the house above a certain amount. Secondly, you have to shop around. You talk to agents until you find one that will take what you're willing to pay to sell your home. And believe me, there are plenty of agents out there. There are currently just under 1.5 million agents who are members of the National Association of Realtors. And that number is actually down about 5% from a peak of 1.6 million in October of 2022. Since last October, when the Missouri court issued its verdict against the National Association of Realtors and its co-defendants, the National Association of Realtors has lost 81,000 members. Now, there's lots of reasons for this. Several firms no longer require their agents to be members. Other firms have opted out of all the legal drama. There's economic headwinds that some agents are just giving up. There's also attrition. The median age of a real estate agent in 2023 was 60 years old. The last strategy is to negotiate. Most agents will negotiate their rate. They'll lead with, this is my standard rate, but they have another rate, which is, this is what I'll take to get your business rate. Still, critics of the 6 commission is gone view will say that not much is going to change until something forces fiduciary interests to align. Fundamentally, the incentives are not aligned in a commission structure that splits the fee between the buyer's broker and the seller's agent. Why would a seller who wants to sell the house quickly for the most amount of money possible agree to compensate an agent who represents a buyer who arguably wants to do this at their own time and pay the least amount possible? It doesn't line up. Why would a buyer work with an agent whose incentives are not aligned with theirs? Which brings me to buyers. What do they have to gain by this settlement or to lose? This settlement requires buyers to have a buyer's representative agreement that lays out what services are offered, how much it costs, and who will pay. It could be the seller, but if the seller isn't offering, the buyer could be on the hook for their own agent's fee. Much has been made about what this settlement will do to harm first-time home buyers and minority buyers who stand to be disproportionately burdened by having to pay for their own agent when buying a home that all already costs an enormous amount in down payment. It's something to keep an eye on. If these groups, already harmed by a housing shortage and an affordability crisis, drop any more from the market than they already have, there will be a need for a rapid course correction. But most consumer protection groups argue that the transitional costs of buyers paying fees up front would be dwarfed by the long-term benefits of an action like uncoupling commissions. Even if the letter of the new rule in the settlement allows for cooperation between a seller agent and a buyer's agent, the focus on it is expected to weaken. The research has shown that when a consumer who hires an agent pays that agent themselves, the consumer is much more careful about the fees and they go down. Post-settlement, this moment right now is a chance to explore new models for home buyers and home sellers, and to find new ways to nudge buyers and sellers into working with agents who are aligned with their interests. Some will say it's naive to bet on consumers to act in their own economic interest, or to approach the cutthroat process of buying a home in this market with any sort of collective ethos, especially when the savings will come at $2,000 here and $14,000 there and $750 there. It's hard to tally, and it doesn't really feel like it adds up to much. But the rules that gave sway to the de facto 6% commission have been removed. And people are watching to see what comes next. I say the 6% commission is no more, so long as that's what buyers and sellers want.